I had a fairly small family at the time. It was just the five of us. It was my parents, me, my older brother, and my baby sister at the time. We lived in a small but cozy home in St. Paul, Minnesota. But before we continue, let me start off by saying that I myself did not experience anything out of the ordinary or paranormal while living at this house. Instead, it was my parents that had this experience. If I recall correctly, I was probably about 10 years old or so when this incident had taken place. My parents had been arguing a lot from what I remembered. This didn't bother me much because my siblings and I had become somewhat used to it. However, one day, I overheard my mom speaking to an aunt over the phone, and she was venting in anger about how she couldn't believe that she was pregnant again and that it was all my dad's fault. I was excited. I mean, I had my older brother, who was a year older than me, and then my baby sister, who was just 3 years old at the time, but still, I was overly excited for another sibling. As soon as my mom got off the phone, I asked her with a smile if we were having another sister or brother, and she just yelled at me and told me to go to my room. I was confused. I had no idea, nor did I have any knowledge of knowing how big of a decision it was to have a child. I mean, I was only a child myself at the time. Days passed, and my parents were still fighting. Soon enough, my hopes for a new sibling went south. I heard my mom tell my dad that she was going to go through with an abortion. I didn't know much, but I knew that getting an abortion would mean that we wouldn't be having another sibling. There was nothing we could say or do. The more we asked or talked about it, the more stressed and angry my mom became. I still remember her telling my dad, "This is my body, and you can't tell me what to do." With that said, a few days later, my mom made an appointment with the clinic to go through with this abortion. I still remember that day. My mom and dad hardly spoke to each other. I don't recall why, but I had gone along with them to the appointment. It was a long and awkward ride to the clinic. When we arrived, my mom went in alone, and I stayed back in the car with my dad. As we sat in the parking lot, my dad finally broke the silence and said, "Son, remember this day. I can't tell your mother to do anything. She never listens. Remember your mom's decision today." I just nodded slowly. A sense of sorrow came over me. The realization that I would not be getting a baby brother or sister had really just been confirmed. I could also hear the sorrow in my dad's voice, and that was rare because my dad wasn't a man to show many emotions. Fast forward about a month or so later, this is when things started happening around the house. As I've stated earlier, us siblings did not have any known experiences at this house, but it was my parents that did. One day my mom was down in the basement with my younger sister strapped on her back as she did the laundry. As she was sorting out the clothes, my sister had fallen asleep. My mom finished up the load and made her way to the staircase, but all of a sudden she felt a jolt of shock coming from my little sister on her back. My mom jumped too, but put her hands on my sister's legs to calm her down. My mom didn't think much, and she continued on with her day. Later that night, while we were asleep, my mom had noticed some noises coming from the bathroom. The noise, from what she explained, sounded like a plastic cup being picked up lightly and then dropped onto the bathtub to make that bouncy tapping sound, if that makes sense. She got freaked out and woke my dad up. She told him to listen to see if he heard it as well. They sat in bed listening. A few seconds later, the sound came back. My mom told my dad to go check it out. Without hesitation, my dad went into the bathroom and turned the lights on. Nothing. He looked into the bathtub. He did see the cup though. It was lying flat on its side. My dad picked the cup up and set it standing up on the side of the tub where the shampoo and conditioner bottles were. There was enough space for the cup to stay in place without falling. The only way it could fall was if someone moved it. My dad went back to bed and told my mom he didn't see anything and to just go back to sleep. A few hours later, the sound came back again. My mom was really freaked out now. She woke my dad up again. They both made their way to the bathroom this time, turned on the lights, looked into the bathtub, and the cup was in the tub lying on its side again. My dad was concerned now. They knew now that this had to be a spirit, a ghost, something that was doing this. Even so, my parents did not tell us a word about this incident. My guess is that they didn't want to frighten us or to make the situation worse. The only way my brother and I had found out was when we overheard my dad talking to a relative on the phone, saying that he needed his help with something. Days later, a gentleman had came over to our house. I didn't recognize this man, but my parents told us that he was considered like a grandfather to us. We found out shortly that this man was also a shaman. My parents told my brother and I to take my sister into the other room to go play, but even when we were on the other side, we couldn't help but listen in on the conversation. We heard everything, and my brother and I got freaked out. My sister was too young at the time to understand anything, so she was lucky. Moments later, the shaman told my parents to not be worried and that he would do his best to help. He started doing his ritual, and soon we could hear his chants coming from the other room. You see, for us Hmong people, we depend highly on our shamans for help when we don't have the answers, when we have no other way, or when we are just clearly just too afraid and just need help from these type of entities that enter our homes. This shaman was on a quest to find out who the spirit was that was playing with the cup in the bathtub, and to also find out what they wanted. After about an hour or so, the shaman had completed his ritual. He asked my parents for a cup of water, being so thirsty from the draining process. He paused after a big gulp of water. He then looked at my parents and said, "My son, my daughter, I am in deep sorrow, and I am sad for you both. How many kids do you have?" My mother said, We have 3, Father. I see, the shaman said. And these 3, they are well, as far as health? My dad replied, Yes, Father. We have 3 healthy kids. What seems to be the matter? Well, son, from what I was able to see, the spirit that had been in your home and playing with the cup, well, you see, this was also your child. Did your wife have a recent miscarriage or an abortion? My mom started tearing up and said yes. The shaman went on to explain in full detail of what he had seen on the other side. He told my parents, though you didn't know the sex of the child at the time, I have confirmation that it was a girl. While speaking to her, she told me that she was very sad, but also very angry at you two. She was ready to come into this world as your child. She had been waiting for the right time, the right family to become a part of. She thought she had found this in your home. So every night, she would wander around the house, primarily the bathroom. She told me that she had been playing with the cup because she saw how much your other daughter loved it as well while she was taking her baths. She just wanted to be a part of your world. However, I apologized on your behalf as the parents and asked for her to move on, and that the time was not quite right for her to be within a family, but that she would soon find a home. She had agreed. However, as a way of sending her on her way, I told her that your family would offer a chicken as a way of wishing her the best as she moved on. My parents gave the shaman their words. The next day, my parents went to the chicken farm, and they found the most beautiful chicken that they could find and brought it home to clean and prep as a meal for my unborn sister. With sorrow and tears, my dad lit some incense sticks as he said a few words out loud, intended for my unborn sister to hear. He apologized for the result of what had happened, and he wished for her the best, and that she would someday find a family of her own. Till this day, this event still sits with me. It still makes me sad. I mean, there aren't very many of us siblings, even still today. And just knowing that we had another sister in whom we have never even gotten a chance to meet, it just makes us feel a certain way. Knowing that she was playing with the cup, it doesn't even seem creepy to me anymore. I mean, she was just looking for attention. She just wanted to be loved. Ever since my dad sent her on her way, they never heard noises in the middle of the night again. So, to my unborn sister, wherever your spirit may be today, I'm also very sorry, and I hope that you have found happiness.